Hi everyone, I'm Eric Fritz with E Technologies. We're a reliability equipment supplier specializing in vibration, ultrasound, infrared alignment, motor circuit analysis, as well as many other PDM technologies. We also supply training for the implementation of all of our products, which is the reason for our video series. If you have any feedback or any other product videos you'd like us to cover, feel free to reach out to us at any time. You can find us at our website, www.ietechnologiesllc.com. If you have any interest in the products that we're supplying, we can also help with that. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the video. Here we have the body of our E95 camera. Again, is going to be absolutely identical to the E75 and 85 cameras. The lens that I have on my demo camera is a 24 degree or 17 millimeter lens. They also have two other available, a 14 degree and a 42 degree lens for wide angles. These lenses now have auto cal feature, which will allow you to get an additional lens and attach it to the camera and have it calibrated to the camera without having it sent back to the factory. To disconnect the lenses themselves, it's very simple. We have two lines here that are going to be quarter turn apart and pulled this way to disconnect. If we want to reconnect them, it's another nice quick quarter turn back, make sure the lines light up. We also have two different ways to focus the camera. This is our manual focus mechanism, just like our E40, 50, and 60 had, but on the bottom of the camera here towards our triggers, instead of having one trigger, we have two now. This one here is our front one, is going to be our autofocus. So we're going to tap that for an autofocus, and the larger trigger here is actually our image capture button. The camera itself has a little bit different battery style than our E40, 50, and 60. It's going to be a quick disconnect without opening any latches, but you pinch the front and back and pull straight out. And then on top of the camera here, we have our SD card slot and our communications port, which can also be used for a HDMI output as well. The camera also has a speaker and microphone built into it and a tripod mount on the bottom. Alright, here we have the main screen of the E95 camera. Again, this is going to be very similar to our E75 and 85 cameras. They are touchscreen, so we can either tap the screen to bring up our menu options or tap the screen to move our spot temperatures around. We can tap the screen to get into our temperature scale if we would like, or we can simply hit this center toggle to bring up our menus. Toggle left and right, up and down, or the center key is for our select. Once I get into my menus, if I would like to get back out, I'm going to use this top key here as a back button or an escape key. So again, if I bring up a menu and I want to get back out, hit this back button until I'm back to the main screen. On the left top portion of the camera, we have our playback button. So any videos or pictures that we have stored on the camera will be shown in that menu. The other key feature of this button is if you hold it down for longer than a second, it will actually nuke the camera. So it's going to do a non-uniformity correction or basically an instantaneous calibration. That can be key if your camera is just booting up and you want to kind of ramp up that process, or if you switch between temperature ranges like I can do here. If you look up in the top left, now it says squiggly line 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which just means that it's approximate and we can't rely on that temperature until it's calibrated fully. So if I hold down this key for longer than a second, you see it says calibrating on the top, and it'll take just a second here, and that should go away, as you can see. So I'm going to switch back to my main lowest temperature range for the application that I have set up here, and we'll just continue on. Our next button down is our programmable button. So That's essentially going to be something that we can use as a custom key. Again, mine is set up to switch temperature ranges. It can be set up to change color palettes, to go from auto to manual temperature scale. It can be used for different features there. If we want to activate that or we want to set our programmable button, all we're going to do is hold the P button down, wait for the circle on the main screen to completely make a circle, and then it's going to open up our options. Again, I have mine set up for temperature range, but I can switch between color palettes, single shot and video, zoom, as well as many other things, and that's really just a matter of preference. I'm going to hit the back button, but if I wanted to select something, I would simply hit the center key, and it should set our programmable button. I'm going to go back. And the only other thing here on the main screen besides our power button over here is our new laser distance measurement button. For this to work properly, the laser has to be enabled in your settings menu. But if I point this up at my wall and I hold that button down, it's going to give me a distance measurement of 2.33 feet, which is certainly kind of a nice feature to have for certain applications. I'll go right back down here to my demo connections. And from here, essentially, we have some more options within the screen, but we're going to cover that after a short break. Now that we've gone over some of the main buttons on the front of the camera here, I want to go over some of the on-screen capabilities as well as some of the menu structure on board our EXX cameras. The zoom capability on these cameras is much like our cell phones now, where we can simply pinch outward and inward to zoom in and out on our object. And again, much like our cell phones now, if we have a menu option for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, as well as screen brightness and things like that, we can bring that down by simply swiping up and down. It's also going to give us our battery and storage capacity, as well as a lamp and some other things. The Wi-Fi here on the left is enabled. The black buttons here are not. The next one over is our Bluetooth, a lamp, and then our screen rotation, which again is going to auto orientate based on the way the camera is being held. Most cases you're going to be holding it directly upright. Our Wi-Fi here on the left is designed for importing or remotely controlling or viewing the cameras with a smartphone or a tablet, and that can be covered in a separate video on how to connect to the cameras with your smartphone. But essentially all you're going to do is connect to the camera via the Wi-Fi network on your phone. And using the Flir Tools mobile app, you can do some really neat things remotely and wirelessly import images to a smartphone or a tablet. Our Bluetooth menu is simply for meter link technology, which is for our meters and our multimeters and clamp meters. If you wanted to add a voltage or an amperage to an image, the Bluetooth is for that portion of it. Again, if we want to get back to the main portion of the screen, we're going to swipe right back up. I'm going to use the touch screen so you can see what I'm doing, but again, this can be done by tapping the center toggle. If I tap here, I'm going to get my main menu on the bottom. Our first menu from left to right is our auto to manual scale adjustment. So it's always in auto scale as a default, and just simply means that on our scale on the right is going to automatically change with the coldest and hottest temperatures that it's seeing. But that can be misleading if we have a wide temperature scale. So if we want to adjust to a manual scale, you can see now on the right that we have toggles up and down and toggles up and down. And as you can see, if I toggle left and right, the arrows are going from top to bottom and vice versa. And essentially what I can do is I can tighten my range. So I'm right now bringing up the bottom portion of my range to try and compact and create more contrast in a tighter temperature scale. And again, if I want to get out of that, I can simply go back to my auto temperature range, which would be right here. Our next menu over is our measurement parameters, some of the environmental or atmospheric corrections that can be made: emissivity, reflected temperature, relative humidity, atmospheric temperature, your object distance, and then compensating for an IR window. So if you're looking through an IR window on a piece of switchgear or an oven or something like that, you can activate that by hitting the window compensation button, toggling up. You can set your temperature of the optic, and then over here is your transmission through the window, because there is a loss through any window. Depending on the manufacturer of the window or the camera, that transmission rate is going to completely vary. So it helps to know what your transmission loss or your transmission setting is on your camera. If you don't have to do that on your camera, you can always do that from the software at a later date. Our next menu over is our image modes. So we only have a few of them on board the camera, but from the software you also have a few other ones, such as thermal blending, thermal fusion, things like that. Here's our standard thermal image, which is what we were in the entire time going over the camera here. If I move over to the left, this is our patented technology, thermal MSX, or multispectral dynamic imaging, which is simply overlaying details from our infrared image over the top of our digital image. So you can see some numbers here on our breaker illustration on the back. So if I go back to my thermal image, that goes away. So it adds a lot of different detail from, let me toggle back over here. It adds a lot of detail to nameplate information, breaker numbers, tag numbers, child ID, different things like that, that's going to add just a little bit more detail to your infrared image. That can be done either from the camera or from the software. So again, if you don't take it in MSX, but you'd like to put it on a report or send it to management with the MSX on, that's certainly an option for you. Our next menu over is our picture-in-picture, which is always nice to have as an option if there's not a lot of thermal contrast or gradients shown in the image. You can see on the outside in digital, and in the center you're going to get it in your thermal image. This can be adjusted later on as well. And then our next one over is just going to simply be our digital image. There's not much of a need for that, as your infrared images, whether it's an MSX, picture-in-picture, or in standard thermal, a digital image will be taking at the same time. There are a few save options which I'm going to go over later in the video, which will allow you to preview the image before it saves to try and keep you from storing images that may or may not be of quality to you. Moving over from our image mode, here we have our measurements. So these are just different options for measurements on screen if we were trying to get temperatures. Our first one from the left is just no measurement. So if you wanted to just see contrast and detail on the image, you can certainly clear the screen. Spot temperature, so this is just a center spot. It is fixed until we tap it and move it around. So if I wanted to get a temperature on this connection here, it's going to display that in the top left. Again, this can be done from the software later on. It's not absolutely necessary that you move these things around. It can also be done when you store the image from the camera, which I will also show you later in the video. Our next menu over is a hotspot. So this is for hotspot detection. If we wanted to find a hotspot on a motor, we can make this box much larger, and it's automatically going to jump to the hottest thing that the camera sees and display it in the top left. So you can see 164 here coming in on the connection. That can be moved around, and you can also set alarms based on that. We can also add a cold spot detection on that, which is our next menu over. Here on the right is our cold spot. So for refrigeration or HVAC, it'll automatically jump to the coldest thing that it sees. So if you have a below limit that you want to have on an image, you can certainly use this tool for that. Our next two, you see a little figure here and a figure here with a 1 and a 2 next to it. We have two preset buttons. Again, this is a lot like our programmable button on the front portion of the screen, but this is going to be for user preferences. So if you want to have a certain orientation of spots like I have here, 1, 2, and 3, I have that set up as my first preset. If I go over to my second preset, I actually have two hotspot boxes. And so essentially on the top portion of the box, it's jumping to the hottest spot on the top connections, and then the bottom one is jumping to the hottest spot on the bottom connections. It can be done various different ways. These are just two examples that I had used. Another thing we can do with these boxes is if I hold down the box, I have some options within each spot that I have on the screen. So all the way to the left is just removing the figure from the screen. I can enlarge it, make it a different size, or move it around. I can set an alarm, which I'll come back to in a second, or I can create min, max, and average. Right now I only have the max in each box. That will also give me the lowest temperature and the average temperatures in that box, which can be beneficial as well. And then our next one is our local parameters. So we had our measurement parameters on the main screen, but if we wanted to have local parameters per each box, for example, we have a different emissivity on the connections here than we do on the bottom. We can set an emissivity of a 0.9 and a 0.7 down here if we wanted to. So we're comparing apples to apples, if you will. Moving back to my alarms on each box. If you tap the alarm button, you can alarm above or below a threshold. Here is above, here is below, and then all the way over is going to be what temperature you want it to be. So most cases, at least in my industrial environment, we're going to get a lot more people looking for above a specific threshold, and then we can set this to whatever temperature you'd like. You can have it sent to no sound, which will essentially flash red when you have an alarm, or I can move up to a beep. And depending on the volume on your phone or your camera, it can get extremely loud, so I'm not going to do that alarm in case the alarm goes off during the video here. But it certainly has the capability of alarming audibly or visually. So if I go to off, I'm going to leave that screen alone. And then from here, I'm going to actually clear the screen a little bit so we don't have so much going on while I'm moving through the rest of the menus. If I tap the screen again and move over, I have my different color palettes. This is really going to be user preference again. I prefer iron, but there are times when I use a rainbow or rainbow high contrast or even a white hot. It's not as visually telling for a lot of people, but if you do thermography on an rather often basis, the white hot is a very, very good palette. Black hot, we have some other ones here that maybe are a little less popular. Then we have some other alarms. We used to call these isotherms, which is basically isolating a specific temperature range to show you only the detail that you want. So my above alarm here, if I hit this, you see in the top right corner I have above 84.4 degrees, and I can move that up and down so that it only shows red on things that are in the range that I'm specifying. So as I move this up to about 90 degrees, you can see it's basically graying out or blacking out the details that I don't care about and only showing me temperatures here and here that are above my threshold. So it can be a nice little time saver if you use it, but again, it's really of user preference. So I'm going to go back to my iron palette. And then my next menu over is my settings menu. And that I will cover here briefly. Alright, we're now in our settings menu, which we have a handful of different options to choose from in here. Our first one is our recording mode. These cameras now have the capability to not only do a single shot, which is what we were set up in before, but they also have video feature. While most of the cameras have had video in the past, this actually has the capability to do video, but with also a radiometric video recording. So if somebody has rotating equipment or things that are in motion and they don't want to try and time them by snapping an image during the process, they can record a video and then later on go back and extract live radiometric or data-filled images from a video file. Or you can simply take video if you wanted to. We also have some time-lapsing and filtering here below, not often used. Our next menu below is our connections menu. So I mentioned the ability to be able to connect to a Wi-Fi device like a tablet or a smartphone. In this menu you have your Wi-Fi and your Bluetooth. My Bluetooth is off. The other way to connect or to adjust these is by pulling down the screen menu like I did earlier in the video. But if I go into the Wi-Fi settings here, if I wanted to connect to a Wi-Fi device, I would either share this or go into share settings, and within the share settings it has the SSID of the camera, which is how it will show up on your Wi-Fi device as a wireless network. You do not need Wi-Fi or internet access to be able to connect to a device, but it's just a way to pair your phone or your tablet with the actual camera. And then on your camera, or excuse me, your phone or your tablet, it's going to ask for this password down here on the bottom. And once that's entered, you won't have to enter it again unless you have multiple devices that you're using. If I back up here and I go down to my camera temperature ranges, again, this camera has 3 different temperature ranges: -4 to 248, 32 to 1202, 572 to 2732, and these are all three in Fahrenheit. If you make changes to these ranges, again, there's going to be a slight delay in your spot measurement accuracy, so you're going to want to make sure to either nuke your camera or wait until it's no longer reading with our squiggly or approximate mark here in the top left. Again, my programmable button, like I showed you earlier in the video, is actually set up for changing temperature ranges automatically when I tap the button, so I wouldn't have to go into the menu option for this, which is highly recommended, as that's kind of a tedious process, especially if you are starting to view something that's towards the higher end of your temperature range. You may want to make that switch. Below it here is our save options and storage. This is actually where we're going to have the option to preview the image before it actually saves. So simply we would just tap that, turn it on if we wanted to. You can add certain annotations, you can compress the video. So this is actually an MPEG video. So if I took a video file now, that's all it would be, is an infrared recording. It would not have radiometric or spot measurements within the video. But if I tap that menu and go down to our CSQ file format right here, or radiometric storage, we would have that capability of doing that. You do need Flir Tools Plus for that feature to work in the software, which is not free. It's just shy of $300, but they also have a month free trial for that if you'd like to trial that. Photo as a JPEG, we can turn that on and off. We have some digital camera options, and we also have our measuring distance, which I had turned off on my camera after we shut the camera off here a little while ago. So our file formatting, and then we can delete all saved files. Again, I don't like to get too much into this stuff because the more menu options you start looking into, the more chances there are of deleting images on accident or things like that. Our next menu down is our device settings. So this is going to have a lot of our camera information, our units, you know, some of the things that we set up when we first started the camera. So our first menu is our language, time, and units. So that's going to be, you know, what language do you want it in? Fahrenheit or metric, Celsius, what kind of different options you want set up in there. Again, time zones, how you want your date and time format to be. These are all things that you can kind of figure out by browsing through your camera. I did mention that the camera has a manual focus mechanism on the front part of the camera, and also an autofocus tap just on the upper part of the trigger. But it also has continuous autofocus, as you can see here on the bottom. That can actually be turned on with our programmable button or by going into the settings menu. And by doing that, as you scan, you know, in a plant or on a customer site, it will automatically focus for you without having to hit a button. So very nice feature. Again, not something they included on a lot of the cameras until these were released. Our display settings, GPS coordinates, things like that. This is where we actually enable our lamp and laser, again, for our distance measurements. On the front part of the camera to work, we have to have the lamp and laser turned on. Do we want to have our delayed time off in case your camera is, if you want it to go into sleep mode, you can do that. And there's some interface options, the volume on your speaker or the beeping on your alarms. That's how that would be set right here. Our reset options, periodically service may recommend doing a reset if you're having issues with any of the cameras. That would be in this menu here. And then here on the bottom we have some camera information. So if anybody ever asked for serial numbers or the model of the camera or the type of lens or anything like that, that can be found here in our camera information. And then on the bottom here's our regulatory certificates and things like that for international purposes and different things like that. Very rarely get into that menu for any reason. That is just about going to do it for our settings menu. There's a lot more I could have gotten into, but for most people it's not something that needs to often be changed. Now the last part of the video I want to get into is a little bit about our images and how we can analyze images after they're taken. And again, if we tap our play button here, we're going to bring up our image file format. So this is what's on our SD card or on our camera that's built in. You have different folder options. These are just something that I put together. You can name them whatever you want, whether that be based on a certain part of the plant or a certain facility or a certain piece of equipment or just a date. Really kind of up to you how you want to do it, but if you want it to be stored in any one of these files, it has to say active. So you're going to want to make sure that if you want to activate another one, you got to make sure you do that over here. I have 3 folders made up and I have certain images in each one of the folders. If I wanted to add a folder, I can go in here, create a folder and call it pumps. Hit done. Oops. And here I have my pumps folder and it says active. Again, if I back out of here and start taking images, those new images are going to get stored in this pump folder. If you notice the graphics on the left, I don't have any infrared graphics in here because I have no images stored. That would be the exact opposite on these here where we actually have images stored. If I open one of these up, I'll open this 100 underscore Flir folder and get you an image that we can do something with. Up and down, left and right again, or if we wanted to, we could tap the screen. If I tap the screen, I have an image that was taken. I have a hotspot box here in the center. If I tap that again, I'm going to get some options here on the top. This top option on the left is going to actually give us our visual image. If I tap it again, it's going to go back to our infrared. If I hit the top right button here, it brings a drop-down menu on the right where we can do a few different things. So our first one is actually going to be some tools for adding spot temperatures to an image or changing what we've already had on here. So if I go in here, it's just going to be like as if we were holding the camera live on our object, but obviously we're not needing to hold the camera for this. We're just simply changing and moving things around, resizing. You can add multiple spots, things like that. Again, this can be done from the software. Just as easy, if not easier. We can change our temperature scales. So this would be another good one. If I tap the top one and I bring our bottom scale here on the left up, you can see as my contrast is changing and I'm actually getting more thermal gradient and contrast to show up on my image as I can find my temperature scale. Again, much nicer when you show a temperature scale that's not quite as wide because you're going to see finer details. As you can see, we're getting some of those details to show up here. And again, these can be changed. You can save it like this, or you can just leave it as is and do this from the software. I'm going to discard any of the changes that I made, and we're going to back right back up into that menu. And I go down to the next one. I can trash the folder, or trash the image, excuse me. This is going to be some about our image, when it was taken, emissivity, distances, all the things that are measurement parameters that are set up in the camera when the image was taken, a lot of which can actually be changed later on if you wanted to. But again, not absolutely necessary to change these things or even view them from the camera. Our next menu over is going to be for adding notes to the screen. So if you wanted to add, excuse me, not to the screen, to the image, when it stores it to the software, you could add a note about the image, name the image something. You could put that you think there's a potential problem with the plating that we had on there or whatever. But I'm going to back out of this. That's really circumstantial. Our next one down is actually going to be a voice annotation. So what I can do is actually hit this button, and it's going to ask me if I want to record. If I want to record, I can say, I can tap it, and you see up here it's recording. I can say hotspot. I think we got a hotspot here on the plate on the top right. I stop it, and I can play it back. And again, up here it's recording. I can say hotspot. I think we got a hotspot here. You get the idea. We have a speaker and a microphone now built into the camera, so no need for our Bluetooth headsets or anything like that. Our next menu over, or down I should say, is some charting. So we have different folder type parameters that we can change: location, where the site was, if you thought there was a problem, a description. Again, similar to our notes, but a little bit more options for splitting up what the notes may be, or a way to organize the images before they enter the software. Our last one on the right, if you're a sketcher, if you have a stylus, this could be certainly a nice feature. But if I wanted to point an arrow here and say hot, that's how I could store my image, or I don't have to, but there's certain things like this that we could circle. You could put an X. Again, you get the idea here. But again, a lot of this stuff can be done later on, and on the bottom here you can see that I can erase or redraw or cancel everything that I did, or just completely dump the image if I wanted to. I'm going to discard it because I don't want an image with that many specs on it. Besides that, I don't believe we have any more options there. But again, each one of these images stored both a thermal and an infrared, even if I had MSX on, our overlay feature. The cameras have usually 4 or 8 gig SD cards, and unless you're taking a lot of video, that's gonna last you a really long time. You can also have the camera set up to erase images upon dumping them or importing them into the computer, which is a nice feature if you want to maybe bring it onto a C or a D drive for multiple other people at your facility to bring images in, but you want to make sure that they actually save on the software. Otherwise, you may lose all your images on the camera. Just another option for users, but again, it comes down to user preference.
If you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe and hit the like button below. For technical support, product information, or if you'd like to understand how I&E Technologies can help you, please visit our website or reach out to us directly. Thanks for watching.